Okay, so now let's take a look at our 3D modeling environment within our user interface. That's this area here. Okay, now we navigate within this environment using XYZ coordinates. This is a Cartesian coordinate system. Okay, and we can define any point within this space using our XYZ coordinates. Now in the center here, you'll see 3 squares. These are called datums. Okay, and datums are a plane or a flat surface that we can use for placing entities, creating sketches, trimming objects, among other things. And we can place a datum anywhere we like to within our space by right-clicking and navigating to our Insert Datum icon. Okay, so these 3 datums in the center are known as our global datums, and they will be there in every new file. Okay, so this red datum relates to the x-axis. Okay, and this red datum is what we call the side datum. Okay, and any point that we pick on this datum will have an x-coordinate of 0, an x value of 0. Now we have the green datum. This relates to the y-axis and is called our front. Okay, and likewise, any point picked on this datum will have a y value of 0. Finally, we have our blue datum. This is the top, and it applies to our z-axis. Okay, because any point picked on this datum will have a z-coordinate of 0. Okay, so at the top of our 3D environment, we have this toolbar. It is the toolbar that we added a few commands to previously, and this is called the Document Aware toolbar. And this gives us easy access to frequently used commands. Okay, and to demonstrate the purpose of some of these commands and to understand how we navigate the 3D environment, I'm going to bring in a simple 3-dimensional block. So we can do this by looking within the Shape ribbon tab. We have our block command. Now you will notice that we have several commands with black arrows beneath them. If we click on the black arrow, we are presented with a few more commands. Okay, so anywhere you see the black arrow, we have more commands available to us. In this case, we are just using the block, so we can left click on the block here, or the block icon that is already up here. So left click, and now when we left click on a command, this will bring up our input manager for that specific command. Okay, and then there are various inputs that we need to make in order to carry out that command. I am not going to cover these in great detail right now, as we will get to that later. I'm simply bringing in a block as a reference point. But I will also point out this icon up here in the upper right hand corner, the tooltips icon. Left click here to bring up a tip on the command. We can also press F1 or left click on this question mark icon to bring up our more detailed instructions relating to that particular command. Okay, for now I'm just going to bring in this block by left clicking. Once we have our preview, we can then confirm a command by left clicking on this green tick here in the input manager or on the far right of the screen. Alternatively, we can middle click the mouse button to confirm the command. Similarly, this red cross will cancel the operation or command. So left click. Okay, and when we confirm the command, we see our block has been brought in. Our input manager has also disappeared because we have carried out the command. And you'll also see that we have an operation added to our history manager, the block. Okay, so every time we use a command, the operation we perform will be added to the history manager. Okay, so now let's have a look at how we navigate our 3D environment. I'll be showing you how to navigate your environment using a conventional 3-button mouse with a scrolling middle wheel. You can get a 3D mouse that will make navigating the 3D environment much easier, but once again this is not an essential piece of equipment. It can just make your life that much easier. Okay, so using a 3-button mouse, we can zoom in and out on our object using the middle scroll wheel, like so. And you may notice that we zoom in and out of the point at which our cursor is placed on the screen. So if I place my cursor at this corner and zoom in, it will zoom into that corner. Likewise, the bottom. We can change this setting in the configuration panel. In the display tab, we can make our zoom reference point the center of the screen instead of the cursor. Okay, so now we can pan our screen from left to right or up and down by clicking the middle mouse button. In this case, I'll be pushing down on my scroll wheel. We hold it in and then we move our cursor. Okay, you can see we are panning. Finally, we can look around our object by holding the right mouse button down and moving the cursor. So we hold the right button down and move the cursor. And this allows us to pan around our object. Okay, now if we would like to return to our default view, we can use our view commands in the document aware toolbar. These ones here. Okay, so I left clicked on the black arrow next to our view icon. The auxiliary view takes us here. The rest are rather self-explanatory. Top view, front view, we can also access our views within the view manager on the left. We double click on a view to move the screen into that position. We can also create a custom view. Right click, new. Okay, so next in the document aware toolbar, we're going to look at these two colored squares. If we let the cursor hover over the first one, you'll see that it says face color. The next one, line color. Okay, so let's bring in a few more blocks to demonstrate the purpose of these. So first I'm going to zoom out, position my block. I will then change this face color to green. Bring in a new block, left click. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in a new block by left clicking. You will see in the input manager we have a Boolean panel. Okay, I will explain this within the next lesson. For now, I'm going to keep my object as a base. Okay, I'm going to confirm the operation by middle clicking my mouse button, or I could use these confirmation ticks here. So middle click. And you see we now have a green block, as defined by our green face color here. So let's create another one, a red block. Middle click, and we have a red block. Okay, so now I'm going to change the face color to pink. I'm going to navigate to the cylinder. Left click. I am now going to be defining the center of the cylinder. Left click. And now the radius. Left click again. Now the length. Left click. Here is our preview, and as you can see we have some direct editing tools available. We can make quick changes to our cylinder using these direct editing arrows. We left click and drag. I can have greater precision by coming into the input manager and manually entering the radius that I desire. 5. Press enter. So the radius is 5 millimeters. The length is 20. Now something to bear in mind is if I add a value of -20, we see that the direction of our cylinder flips. It is because this direction is considered negative, in the negative z direction. Okay, whilst this direction, the positive z direction, is positive. When defining the dimensions of my cylinder, I can also make use of the scroll wheel on the mouse. By scrolling up and down, I can change the value. Now this is changing the value of my radius in increments of 1 millimeter. If I would like to make this increment smaller, I can make use of my step size within the document aware toolbar. This footstep icon here. If we left click here, we get our step size panel. We can change our linear and our angular step size. Okay, so we are not dealing with angles here, so I'll change my linear step size. Let's make it 0.1, 1/10 of a millimeter. Left click OK to confirm. And now when I use the scrolling wheel to change my radius, we are moving in increments of 1/10 of a millimeter. I can also access my step size command by right clicking anywhere in space and navigating to step size. Left click the green tick to confirm the operation, or middle click. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in a few curves. We navigate to the wireframe ribbon tab. I'm going to select a line. We have several defining operations available. I'm going to stick with the 2-point line. I shall select a first point, a second point, and middle click to confirm. And here we have our line. I will change my line color to green. And now to bring up a new instance of the input manager from the command that I last used, I can use the middle click button on the mouse. So middle click, and I have my input manager for the 2-point line that I created last, but in a new instance. So I can draw a new line. Middle click to confirm. I'll change my color to red. Middle click to launch the same operation. First point, second point, and middle click. So familiarity with these shortcuts will speed up your designing process. Let's change our line color to pink. And this time I'm going to bring in a 3-point curve. This allows us to pick several points, and a curve will be drawn through them. Middle click again. Okay, let's save our work. Now we have our objects created. We will now take a look at the entity filter. If we left click here, it brings up the entity filter panel. This helps us when we are trying to pick an entity. An entity is a type of object. Currently it is set to all. If we want to pick a shape, for example, navigate to shape and left click. You will see here that our entity filter is now set to shape. If we hover our cursor over a shape, it highlights, which means we can pick it by left clicking. This is now picked. Left click anywhere in vacant space to deselect. If we hover our cursor over these lines we created, they will not highlight and we cannot pick them. This is because they are not shapes. So let's change the entity filter to face. You can see now that our cursor is highlighting the faces of our shapes. If we left click, it selects the face. We may change the color, for example. Again, our lines are not highlighted because these are not faces. They're curves. We can also pick our edges. These black lines define the edges of our faces or surfaces. These lines, which are curves, are not edges. Similarly, our edges are not curves. Okay, now let's set it back to shape. I will now show you a window pick. A window pick is where we left click the mouse and drag the cursor. And we can pick multiple entities at once. Release the left mouse button and you'll see that all of our shapes within the window pick are selected, but our lines, which are curves, are not. Left click to deselect. So the entity filter gives us increased control when picking our entities. As we progress, you will begin to understand many more of these different entity types. Also useful for our picking is the attributes filter. Left click to bring up the attribute filter panel. We have options relating to the layer, which I will describe in a moment. Feature, again I will go over what a feature is shortly. For now, let's just look at the color. If we left click here, we can select the color that we want the attribute filter to read. Let's say, for example, pink. We see that it's set to include. Our entity filter we will return to all. And if we perform a window pick, we will see that the attribute filter picks all of the pink entities, this pink cylinder and the pink curve. Left click to unpick. If we set this to exclude, do a window pick, we will pick everything but the pink entities. Let's set this back to include. Left click to deselect. Now we're going to use the entity filter and attribute filter in tandem. Set the entity filter to shape. The color is pink, include, window pick. So this should pick all of the pink shapes, and it does. Not the pink curve, or the other shapes or curves. Left click to deselect. We will now exit out of our attribute filter. When we have exited the panel, the attribute filter will no longer be running. Okay, so now let's look at our layers. So if we come over here in the Document Aware toolbar left click on the drop down arrow, you'll see all of the layers that are brought in by default with the new file. All of our current entities are assigned by default to this layer. We can left click on the light bulb icon next to the layer name to hide the layer, and you'll see that the light bulb is no longer illuminated. Left click to view it again. We can assign entities to different layers. For example, let's assign this shape to a layer. We left click on the shape with the entity filter set to shape. Navigate to our layer tab. Let's assign it to the Mealy Stones layer, just for an example. Left click on the layer name, and it is assigned. Navigate to the panel. Let's hide the Mealy Stones layer, and the red block is hidden. Likewise, it is no longer part of our previous layer. We can also come in to our layer manager that allows us to add new layers and delete current ones.